Hey everybody, Thunder here. I thought I'd talk about self-worth today. I mean, that's as good as, or maybe just a bunch of things, I don't know. Uh, Sometimes when I go out the front door and I go out, to take care of business or do a shopping or just go out for enjoyment or whatever, I look around at mankind and I go, I see some things that are just mind-boggling every day. And I wonder where people's self-worth went and how we got into the condition that we are. I don't know if it's because there's 7 billion people on the planet and everybody just thinks, well, I'm just a number. Basically, they are. Wasn't like in the old days when I was raised where you could walk down the street and go, oh, there's Mr. So-and-so, or there's Joe Blow, or there's Sarah, or there's Mary, or whatever. It's not like those days. Everything is impersonal. But I was thinking about how much people have lost their self-worth, what they think they're worth. And maybe that entails a spiritual component of oneself, the spirit of oneself. I don't know. I'm open for comments on this video. But I think where everything went wrong is when everybody became dependent on what we would call the powers to be or government, or dependent on others for self-sustenance and to supply them with their needs and that type of thing. Because when you look at tribal tradition or early man, or any of those traditions where people were more in a tribal form, and there wasn't this mass mess of industrialized complex, the industrialized complex, or the industrialized civilization, or the whatever, the technological civilization. It all went wrong when people were not providing for themselves anymore, living off the lands, let's say as farmers, or maybe hunters, gatherers, or the tribal tradition of going out and hunting game and providing for one's family, and living off the land, being one with nature. At some point, when you study civilizations, and there's a lot of good books about this, people at some point decided, they were going to buy from others instead of just even bartering and trading one good for another. It started with bartering, actually. And one person would barter with another, or they'd have goods, or they would produce goods, and then they would be a craftsman, and they'd trade their goods or their craft for another craft. But then it got to the point where one person that had a craft got the bright idea that they would maybe hire some other people and create a lot of different crafts, or a lot of their craft. Let's say they would store up their craft, or they would store up their goods, and they would they would be making so much, or they would over farm or whatever, to where they had a lot of goods, and they figured, well, I'll sell my goods to other people that don't want to take the time to do this, or don't want to take the time to go out and hunt, or don't want to take the time to go out and farm. So basically it came from storing up goods and selling in quantity, and people becoming lazy as far as their own providing for themselves. And they figured it would just be better to use this little token or piece of gold or bead or whatever, a bartering system, and trade that for goods and services. And then it exploded and became businesses, and industrialized revolution, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and pretty soon, today, look what we got. People not dependent on themselves, but dependent on others. Not being a farmer, not being next to nature, not having reverence for the animals, interacting with the animals, even on a hunting level. Because the tribal people, every time they killed an animal, they were very reverent about it, and they asked it for its spirit, and they took pains to thank that animal for its spirit, or they thanked grandfather or grandmother earth or grandfather sky for the crops that they grew. What's the point I'm getting to here? Well, the point I'm getting to is that there's 7 billion freaking people on the planet now, and they're all just walking around like zombies, aimlessly slaving for others. Okay, and some people have like 3-4 jobs just to make ends meet, and maybe everybody in the family's working. Well, how did we get into a position of slavery? That would be another good title for this video. How did we get to become one massive group of slaves? Okay. Well, it came about through this thing that I described exactly in the societal conditioning, and pretty soon it grew into this horrible, monstrous thing that we have today, where people are just numbers. 7 billion plus people on the planet, and they're just numbers walking around in a daze. They don't have time to think. They get up in the morning, they go to their job, then they leave that job and they go to another job, and then when they leave that job, they come home. By the time they get home, they're dead tired. And they don't have time to think about anything except getting up the next day. Maybe spending a little time with their families or a little time for themselves. Then you got the myriads of homeless people, that just thousands and thousands of homeless people. And half of them have mental problems. Well, why? Because half of them had mental problems and were thrown out onto the streets, or half of them didn't fit in with society. Are they the only ones that have mental problems? No, they're not the only ones. Half of society has a mental problem. It's called a neurosis. I am a slave, I am a captive, I am a victim mentality, because of societal conditioning and because of all the stuff that's been heaped upon everybody. So when I ask about self-worth, what do you think you're worth? A lot of people don't even consider that. They don't even consider, well, what am I worth? And the fact that they don't consider that, the fact that they don't think about these things like maybe I do, or other people that have a more spiritual bent, the fact that they don't think about it makes them worthless in a way. And let me explain that. I don't mean to say people are not worth. Everybody is a child of spirit and a spiritual being in a physical environment, so they're worth a lot more than they think. But if they don't think they're worth anything, then what good is it? You become a zombie, you become a robot, you become, let's step in line with whatever, and you do that from the day you're born till the day you die. And so people wonder why the powers to be that are sitting up there in their ivory towers and with all their money, and have gotten to that point of having money either because they lived in a rich family, or because they ripped others off, or because most likely they take advantage of others. Doesn't mean they're spiritual, just means they're smarter in a degree of, let's see how we can use the populace, let's see how we can use others for us to live free and easy and high on the hog. Okay? And as they sit up there in their ivory towers looking at all the people that are getting up every day and slaving, and see, not questioning, okay, that's the big thing, just not questioning at all about the circumstances that they're living in. Why don't people question? Why do people just step in line when they know that they're suffering and that they're slaves and that they're being set upon by outlaws? Well, see, the outlaws, the people up there, the ones running the show, whatever you want to call them, the bankers, the politicians, the powers to be, whatever you want to call them, whoever that ilk is, they look at you like, excuse me, they look at you like, well, if they don't care about themselves, which obviously they don't because they've let us screw them over, and they're just a bunch of idiots that prod along like zombies from day to day. If they don't care about themselves, why the hell should we care about them? Let's use them to the hilt. Let's kill them. If they don't agree with us, we'll just blow them away, or we'll make sure they die an early death, or we'll control, they're just a bunch of nothings. They're just a bunch of vegetable brain, walking around like zombie idiots. Okay? That's the way they look at you. And why do they look at you that way? Because you don't stand up and say, I am worth something. I have self-worth, and I am worth just as much as you are, and what gives you the right to control me? To put me in some kind of situation where I'm slaving for you, and you're taking all the money and living the high life with your corporate jets and your big elite hotels and cruise lines and little islands that you go to, and while everybody else is just a massive group of like ants, okay, that are slaves. Even ants are smarter because they have a purpose and they work together, okay? And animals are smarter because you don't see a hawk, that flies in the sky letting people take advantage of it. It stays away from hurtful things, okay? So consequently, when you have no self-worth, you don't look at any of the other people in your life as being worthy, or even your fellow man. If you don't have enough self-worth, if you don't have enough of that spiritual component to think that you're worth something, then what are you going to think about your fellow man? You're going to either just, if he has more, be envious, or if he has less, not really give a shit. Because you're too busy working, and you're too busy not thinking and not feeling and not having compassion. Because see, when you get into this rut of working and slaving and not taking care of yourself, basically letting you say, well, I am working and slaving, how do you say I'm not taking care of myself? Well, because you're not. You're allowing society, you're being forced into a box of society providing your groceries and your items that you need. And how do you get those items? By going out and working for them so that you can obtain them. And then maybe you get a pension that gets taken away, or maybe you get Social Security that gets taken away, or maybe you put all your money in a bank and there's a bank run, or maybe, there's a bankrupt. You see what I'm saying here? It's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle, and you can't break free from it unless you realize what your self-worth is. And then at least you can break free from it on a spiritual level. Okay? That's the first step. The first step is breaking free from this hypnosis, this hypnotic trance that you find yourself in on a spiritual level. Okay? Then when you do that, you have a little bit room to breathe and a little bit room to think. Okay? Now, is there an answer for this? I mean, well, the answer is, first of all, let's wake up and realize our own self-worth. And then we'll see what happens from there. Okay? We'll see what happens from there. But people have to wake up and realize that they're worth something, and that their fellow men are worth something, their fellow men and women, and that the planet that we live on is worth something. I mean, I swear when I go out in the world and I look around at all the goings on and the just stupidity and the people preoccupied with either, oh, their iPod or the TV or CNN or what party they're going to, or they're going to go to the nightclub, or they're going to go here tonight, or they're going to do this, or they're going to, they have no idea that they're just one step away from those homeless people out there that they despise, that they ignore, but they're no better. And they're going to be there soon. They're already disenfranchised people. And when you see some of these homeless people that are obviously some of them are mentally not balanced, not together, they're doing strange things. It's easy to hate them. It's easy to say, oh, look at that scum, look at that, oh my God, how can they act like that? How can they do that? Well, it's because, they fell from that rung on the ladder where you are. It's a matter of rungs on the ladder. You're actually on the lower rungs of the ladder because the elite are all on the high rungs. And then when you finally fall off that lower rung, you become what they call homeless. Or when you reach a certain rung going down, let's say you're a senior, let's say you're homeless, let's say you're this, let's say you're that, you become really expendable. I mean, is expendable the word I'm looking? Yeah, I guess. In other words, the elite really think that you're not worth anything and just throw you away. Okay? They throw you away. They look at you like you're refuse. Okay? They look at you like they don't need you. Okay, you're a burden on society. Okay, you're that ant that's getting older that can't quite climb up the hill with a load on its back. I don't know if this makes sense to you or not. I'm kind of just rambling on, but that's how I get sometimes when I see. Sometimes I think, man, is this a living hell? Maybe this is the hell that is spoke of, okay, in sacred scripture. Is like the hell of the hellacious system that we live in and the way it's gotten. And then you start thinking about divine things, or you start thinking about Great Spirit, or you start thinking about what some people call God. And now you realize sometimes maybe that's why some people go godless and feel that there is no God, because that they feel like they're in a situation and there's no help from that situation, from this outside source they call God. There's no relief. It just it's a tape loop that keeps going around and round and round, and keeps getting worse and worse and worse every day, and more ridiculous and more outrageous, till you wonder, well, where is God, or where is Great Spirit? What's happening here? Are we ever going to get any relief? So people become dependent again on another source outside themselves. And I've said this before, it's all within you. And we're not all going to be on this planet forever. So we have to make peace with that. But I'm just thinking things could be a hell of a lot better if everybody would come to the conclusion that they're worth something. And maybe that's the key. I was thinking about that today, obviously. What are you worth? Are you worth anything? What do you think you're worth? And if you think you're worth something, what are you allowing this to happen to you for? Okay, instead of just going on. I don't think these movies, and I've said this before, like Zombie Apocalypse and The Walking Dead and all that, I don't think that's an accident. I think that's exactly what people are. Okay? Because if you're walking around in a state of slavery, in a state of hypnosis, in a state of not really enjoying life or your fellow man or the planet and all that good stuff, and it's a constant battle, the constant battle of overcoming being dumped on and being a slave and being mistreated, then what are you? I mean, if you're so preoccupied and hypnotized with in this mode of like just getting up in the morning and doing this and then going to bed at night, I mean, what are you? Are you alive, really? No, I wouldn't say you were. Now, if you wake up and all of a sudden you start talking like thunder is right now about self-worth to others and yourself and severely questioning each other about how did we get into this situation? How did this happen? Well, I told you how it happened. That's exactly how it happened, as I just ran it down. So it's now up to you as to what you're going to do about it. Are you going to, because everybody is strong, really. If they came out of this zombified state, if they came out of this hypnotic state, and if they band together and talked to one another and discussed things and realized that the system as it is not fulfilling their needs to be happy and have peace of mind, well, then it's up to you to band together and do something about it. You could throw the bums out. You could do it if you band together and if everybody accepts each other and accepts the fact that there's power in numbers, okay? And there's power in numbers exponentially, and there's power in thought, okay? So it's time, people, to realize your self-worth and quit being on the treadmill and quit not having any regard for your fellow man by not having your own self-worth taken care of. Get off the treadmill, for God's sake. Get off of it. Do whatever you need to do, and the best way to get off of it is to come to a consensus with your fellow man and to start talking to him. And if he's too zombified or too asleep, then go to the next person until you find somebody that's awake. I'm awake. Talk to me anytime. And so you need to find other people like me. If you like what I'm saying, and if it rings a bell with you and you're going, well, man, that sure sounds right. I mean, and I try not to speak too many words without sounding right or it making sense. I don't know. I do ramble sometimes, but I let spirit flow through me. And I open up to that, and I open up to, I guess it's compassion, and but on the other times it's anger. Okay? That we could all, and me included, I mean, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal and saying, well, I'm above all this, I've got it all covered. I don't, because I let myself slip into the same situation as everybody else. That's why I realized, because I know that I have self-worth. While I'm here, you might as well have some, right? So anyway, that's some things that maybe you should think about today. And realize that all of our problems stem from not having, a feeling of being worthy, feeling that, you mean something, not getting lost in the crowd, not getting lost in the din of humanity. And I know it's hard, people, because basically humanity is, they're dumbed down, they're zombies, they're just, and it's like, it's a huge tide to overcome. It's You got to overcome it first within yourself. So whatever you do, at least have self-worth, self-worth, and start from there and work your way out. Okay, realize your own self-worth. All right, I'll leave it there today. Hope I made some sense to you. I hope you got something out of this. This is Thunder, over and out.